Can you see it?
Yep.
Awesome. So welcome to the Beginner's Guide to SQL. I am Amrita. I'm the developer advocate at Cockroach Labs. We are the makers of Cockroach DB, which is a distributed SQL database built for the cloud. And I know that's a lot of jargon, so let's break it all down. So, oops, oops, okay. Um, if you think about any app that you use every single day, be it a Bitcoin app or your Spotify playlist or your Amazon cart or even a simple to-do list, it mostly handles some form of data. So if you think about your Bitcoin app, it collects data about how much Bitcoin you bought, at what price did you buy it, when did you buy it, when did you sell it, and then it helps you make connections between your profile and the Bitcoin graph, like whatever the trending values are. And it helps you ask interesting questions of the data, like how much profit did you make, or how much taxes do you owe on whatever Bitcoin you own. Similarly, for Spotify playlist, it stores all the songs and it helps you make connections between the songs, like forming playlists. And then it lets you ask questions of the data that it collects about you and the songs you like. And that's how we get the yearly rewinds. So you can apply the same logic to almost all the apps that you use. So why is this happening? Right. So most of the apps that you use on a day-to-day basis store data, make connections between the data, and lets you ask interesting questions of the data. And there are many, many ways that you can do this. You can store the data in the form of key value stores or as document stores. But one of the uh, popular ways of storing it are relational databases. Relational databases is a way to store data in the forms of rows and columns of tables, and then you make connections between the tables, and then you ask interesting questions of the data. And the language that you use to talk to the database and ask questions of it is called SQL. So SQL is not the only language, but it's one of the most popular languages of talking to a database. And let's break down the components of this phrase. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So it's a language that lets you ask questions, that is query, of a structured set of data. The data that is structured in the form of rows and tables. And one of the reasons SQL is so popular is that it is very human readable. It is very close to the human languages. So if you look at an example of a question in English, it has some basic components. It has a subject, a verb, an object, a punctuation mark, and maybe an auxiliary verb. And with each of these components can have different values. There can be so many nouns that can be subjects. There can be so many things that can be objects. And with the permutation combination of all those words, you can do a lot of things, which is why English is so powerful. Similarly, for SQL, for SQL, it has keywords, identifiers, and conditions. And each of these components can have many different values. And the permutation and combination of all of them is what makes SQL so powerful because it lets you do a lot of stuff. But the thing that makes it powerful also makes it super intimidating and overwhelming for beginners. So what we are going to do in this session is we are going to focus on the essential SQL statements, a very contained subset of SQL statements that will enable you to make pretty decent beginner level apps. And we are going to break down these SQL statements into two categories. The first category is managing a database. So if you think about, like, forget all of it. Just think from first principles perspective. If you want to use a database, you first need to create a database. Then you need to create a table within the database. Then you need to specify that this is the database that you want to use. Then you might want to see what data you all no, what tables you already have within the database using the show statement. You might want to change how the data is stored using the alter statement. And finally, if you're done with the database, you can drop it. Similar, and once you have a database set up, then you can interact with the data by putting the data into the database, reading the data using the select statement. You can update the values of the data, and then you can delete it. So I know I've been talking a lot really fast for the past 5 minutes, and here is boring. So let's get some practice. What we're going to do today is we are going to make a database of my furry friends at Cockroach Labs. So one of my favorite things about working at Cockroach Labs is that we have a lot of office dogs. And the thing that I miss the most about since like the pandemic hit and we all transitioned remote is that I miss all of them. And all of them used to be in the New York office, and now I don't know where they are in the world. So for this activity, I want us to create a database of my furry friends at Cockroach Labs. Um, and the environment we are going to use for this is our SQL playground. So this is a playground where we have already loaded CockroachDB cluster. It's up and running, so we don't have to spend time in the setup. We can just focus on the SQL statements. And I have the statements here, but if you want to copy paste them, I made a Notion doc for you to follow along. Nope, that's not it. Where is it? This one. Where is chat? I'm sorry, I haven't. Oh, there it is. So, um, feel free to follow along with me. Can you all access the doc? Let me know in chat. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Can you access the SQL playground? Cool. Okay. So let me walk you through what you're seeing on the screen right now. So this setup comes with a database already loaded into it. So this is a database for a fictional company that we call Mover. It's kind of Uber, but not really. And it already has a lot of tables and a bunch of data inside it. But that's what we're going to do use right now. We are going to create our own database. And then that's the one we are going to use. And I you can copy paste the SQL statements from the Notion doc that I shared, but I highly recommend typing it out just to get a feel of how SQL statements are written. And then once you get familiar with it and comfortable with it, then you can copy paste statements going forward. Like you will have to edit them, but just get a feel for the syntax in this workshop. So let's create a database called docs at. And so first, step one, create a database. Then we specify that that's the database we want to use. So if you see here, we were using the Mover database, and now we are using the docs.crl database. The next step is to create a table. So we created a table called dogs, and we have an ID, and we have the name of the dog, the human that belongs to the dog, and the current location of my furry friends. Let's see if that actually worked. Yep, we have a database. We have a table called dogs now. That's awesome. Um, so I forgot to add the favorite treats. I also want to track the favorite treats for each dog so that the next time I see them, I can take them with me. So let's do that. Let's add a column called favorites treats to the table. Okay, so now we have gone through the first set of the essential statements that we talked about of managing a database. We created a database. We told the system that that's the database we want to use. We created a table, and we added an additional column to the database. So now it's ready to get data into it. So let's insert some values. Let's insert the information of the dogs into the database. And then let's see which dogs are in New York. So we inserted values into database. So we put stuff, uh, data into the database, and now we are reading it using the select statement. Um, Now, sadly, none of them work in the New York office anymore. Everybody's working from home. So let's update um, the location to work from home. And that's very sad, but we'll be back soon. And this breaks my heart because PT is my favorite dog, but he's also the only dog I can pick on to delete from the database. So I'm going to delete PT. I'm sure she wouldn't mind. She's awesome. Um, and let's see what our final values are. So, everybody with me? How's it going? Let me know in chat. You have no clue, Rude. I miss PD so much. The only reason I still have Instagram is because I want to look at PT photos. Yeah, there's a lot to pick on, and I'm trying to keep it pretty simple. And like, okay, that's the wrong word to load. It's not simple. I'm trying to keep it to the essentials, but it is a lot. So don't worry if you don't get it all right away. Uh, we'll practice some more and have more resources for you to try out new things. But let me know when you get to this point so we can see some more statements. Is everybody with me? Are we at this stage, all of us? Should I move on? Oh, we entered it. The ID, I literally like entered, passed it as a value when we were inserting the information for the dogs. But there is a way you can no. So here's the thing. When we created the table, we specified it to be UUID, right? So I had to look up UUID numbers from our docs. Our docs are awesome, by the way. You should go check them out. And this was a sample thing. So I put that in. But there is a way you can automatically generate UUIDs. So that's a slightly advanced technique, which is why I left it out of this workshop. But I can absolutely point you to it if you want to go check it out. I'm putting the link in the chat now. Sure. A plug for our docs. Our docs are some of the best docs in the industry, and I'm very proud of them because I used to be a tech writer on the docs team. But seriously, we have some pretty cool docs. You should go check them out. That was a good question, though. So if you have any more questions, let me know in chat. I'm happy to wait for a minute or two. Everybody good? Okay. You can. Okay. Cool. Um, so these were the essentials. Now, so we went through this. Now let's do slightly more advanced stuff. So what we did until now was we created one database with one table and interacted with the data in the database. That usually works for um, like basic beginner level apps. You can build some decent apps with it, but that's not how the real world apps use SQL. Real world apps usually have multiple databases with multiple tables in it. And I just wanted to introduce you to one such sample database just for you to get a feel of how things work. So as I mentioned earlier, we have Mover, which is a fictional vehicle sharing company that we created to demonstrate Cockroach TV's features. And the Mover database has 6 tables, and these are the tables, and these are the data within each of them, and you can see there are connect. I'm pointing to it. You can see there are connections between the tables. So this is what a, a typical schema would look like for a real world app. And setting this up is kind of time taking. So nope. What we did is we built yet another playground for all of you to try, where we uploaded all the data so that you can just go and focus on the SQL. So that's the second part of this activity is let's try working with a slightly more complicated database. Let me know if you can access the link. Cool. Okay. So um, usually, if you don't use the pre-existing environment, you would have to set up the Cockroach TV binaries and stuff, but we already set that up. We set up a single node demo and preloaded it with a database called Mover. If you see this prompt, you can click continue. And once you go here, you can type in show tables. So you can see the tables that we saw in this slide. So here's the thing: if you join a new company, you are already have database set up, right? The other developers at the company would have an existing database that they work with. So before you can start development on your app, you need to know what tables and what content already exists within the database, which is why statements like these are important to know. Is starting step one, see what already exists, and the way to do that is show tables. So these are the tables that already exist in the database, and we are going to create our own new table for drivers. So for this, I'm going to copy paste. Actually, you can just click this little tick mark and it will run the command for you. And to make sure that it was created, so it created a table called drivers for us with the columns that we told it to make. It's pretty, it, yeah, it does what we tell it to do. Everybody okay creating the table? Again, I would recommend typing it out just to get a feel for it because there are different keywords in here that you might trip up on. And then if you do, feel free to look it up in the docs because again, the docs are pretty good to learn SQL. So what we did is we created a table with an ID, a city, a name, driver's license, the address, and we said that the primary key is a composite key, I think. Okay, moving on. Now let's insert some values into the database that we just created. So there are different ways in which you can insert values, which is why you have a bunch of different statements. The first one is telling you to enter it in the order that you specified in while creating the table, in which case you don't have to specify the parameters. But if you want to change the parameters or the order in which you enter the values, then you need to specify the order of the parameters as well. Then you can insert multiple values at the same time, and this is how you do it. So here in both these cases, we are inserting single rows, and in this one, we are inserting multiple rows in the same statement. I don't know if I want to get into default right now because we are running out of time. But if you leave columns out of your statement, then it takes default values. And for most of it, it's null. So if you select from the thing, you can see if that if you don't enter the values, it just takes the default value of null. I'm going to wait for a minute for you to process what we're doing right now and ask me questions if you need to. Everybody following this? Again, I know I'm rushing through this a bit, but these resources are available to you even after the workshop. So take your time with them. It's totally okay if you don't finish them or don't get all of it right now. I don't think we are going to finish all of it right now because we have only 4 minutes left. But I think we are getting through a lot of good stuff here, so I'm happy with it. Okay, this is again a slightly advanced technique called creating an index. So if you have a lot of data and you filter it only on the primary key, it will take a lot of time for it to get you that data. So one way to make it the query faster is to create an index on the data, which is yeah a way to for faster queries. And you can do that while you're creating a table as well. So you can create an index on an existing table, or you can specify an index while you're creating a table. And this we have already seen. We have seen how to read data from a table. You can read all the data by using select star. You can, but if you do that, let's do it. It's going to die on me. Uh, oops. If you do that, it's going to load a bunch of data. So you can limit it to a certain amount, just the first 10 rows, by using the limit 10 thing. You can also use the where clause to get only a certain subset of data. We also use that in the dogs database when we are filtering for dogs in New York. Um, and then you can change the order in which the data is displayed. There we go. And we have also used the update statement in the previous exercise. Um, so this is a similar thing, and we're going to see if that actually worked. Oops. So what we did here was that we updated the promo codes to set it to expired for the ones that had expired, and then I just made sure that it worked. Okay, 1 minute to go. Why won't
Yeah.
it click?
And also, Amrita, if people have any questions, we can also get the workshop slides on the guide.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any way they can reach you, maybe on the Discord, about any of these or?
Yes, I'm on Discord, same username, Amrita. So I'll be hanging out in the Corporate Labs channel. So come chat with me. And you can finish the last two steps on your own time. They just delete a statement and then a goodbye. But I also wanted to share this fun exercise where you solve a murder mystery using SQL. Um, so I'll leave a link to that in Discord as well. And if you want to know how to use how to use SQL and Cockroach DB in an actual app, come hang out with me again in 30 minutes for the next session, which is all about Cockroach Club. I hope this was helpful, and thanks for joining in.
Yeah, thank you. Oh.